because I want to make sure I record this topic. But anyway, so once you know that you have these things like to play around with, and it's about time to make it fun. So I always tell all my clients, all of you guys, that this process is about flexibility. If you want to have pancakes this morning, which I did, then you might as well have pancakes. You just need to figure out a way to make them fit. So the first thing with meal planning starts by choosing obviously your main meals and planning ahead. I always tell you guys, like, the number one step is to plan ahead, because when you're planning ahead, there's nothing more liberating than literally walking into a kitchen and opening up the fridge, knowing exactly what you're gonna grab and what you're gonna get. Because once you do that, then you have a lot more control. I'm sure a lot of you guys, and you can literally comment in there if you want to. When sometimes like you come to the kitchen and you're like, okay, what am I gonna eat today? And then you end up making sometimes not the best decision, and it doesn't really fit well with your goals, and then you feel guilty afterwards. So instead, if you plan things out ahead of time, it's going to kind of help you be more prepared when it comes down to that. So, and it depends also on how many meals you decide to do. Biggest myth out there that exists is that you have to have meals every 2 to 3 hours because we need to speed up our metabolism. That is a complete fallacy. It's a complete myth. It's what works for you. So for me, I don't really snack too much. I actually prefer to have meals. So I'm going to split up my day into meal one, meal two, and meal three. And sometimes at nighttime, I like to kind of have a snack, I call it a bedtime snack, which is gonna come literally right after dinner. So we're just gonna call this like a snack. So I have obviously four things that I need to plan for. Now the second step, so this is number one, is like planning ahead. Now it's about building up what is it exactly that you're gonna put into each one of those meals. So again, you gotta start obviously by making a list of what sounds good to you. What do you love? What do you like? Right? So for me, I love to have like three types of breakfast. Something typically it's sweet, so I'm just gonna go always usually with a type of pancake that I love to make. Or sometimes I like to have something salty. If it's salty, it's usually something such as toast with something on top of it, whatever. So that is like the main idea that I have. So this is, for example, for breakfast. Then for lunch, I'm not a very picky person, so I always like try to find things that are simple to make. But at the same time, sometimes, well, GB, my fiance, she's a recipe developer, so I get to experience and taste some of her amazing creations, and that's totally okay with me. But it's not always the case. So for lunch, I usually try to come up with whatever I have. It's also important for you to know what you have in your kitchen, what you have in your pantry. So if you don't have things to prepare this like awesome taco salad, then why would you plan for that? And if you're not planning for it, you need to make sure that you purchase the right things to make sure that you have it in your grocery shopping list next time that you go. But again, I just gonna say, for the sakes of this, like the things that I have ate in this past week, I'm just gonna say Mexican style, because Cinco de Mayo would just happen. So Mexican style meal, and then we're just gonna do maybe something with fish, right? So now we have our lunches, and then we have our dinners. Let's say we're gonna do either repeats or we're just gonna do something a little bit different. A salad dinner, and then another day we're just gonna do something with rice. I just usually come up with two things for each meal. Try to keep it simple, and sometimes I repeat whatever I do from lunch, I actually do it for dinner. But I come up with the main idea, and then actually comes down to creating the actual plan. So I call it, I usually, one of the things, which is step number two, that I try to kind of teach all of my clients after coming up with this list of things, needs to become obviously following the rule of three. So what does the rule of three teaches us? That every single meal, if you think about a plate, sorry, somebody's like literally calling me right now. If you have a plate, for example, like this, you need to make sure you're splitting it up into three main components. Number one is going to be your carb choice. Second, it's going to be your protein choice, and then fruits or vegetables, which is going to be in the other side. So when I start to look at my other kinds of meals like this, I start to think, okay, my pancake. What is a pancake really? Does it give me carbohydrates? Does it give me protein? Does it give me fats? It really depends on what you're using. I use a protein pancake mix from Trader Joe's. It does have some protein and it does have some carbs. So it kind of hits a little bit of on this too. But it's not as much protein. So I'm like, okay, what else can I add that is not going to bring up my carbs or my fats too much, but I can still actually get enough protein? So I say, okay, I'm going to do my pancakes, and I'm going to do it with Greek yogurt, because Greek yogurt does have a good amount of protein. So now I cover both my carbs and my proteins all together. And then I finish up with the third diet item, which is how can I add a fruit in there? Sometimes vegetables is a little complicated unless you can get a very creative with this. And I'll tell you a trick that I've literally done to add vegetables into your pancake. Don't forget, I'll tell you in a minute. But anyway, so pancake, you have your Greek yogurt, and then simply you just have something like strawberries on top, right? So this is what I usually plan in my fitness pal, and I'll show you that in just a minute, right? So that's a simple way to kind of start to think about this. Then we're just gonna keep out the second option out for now, and then we're just gonna go through all individual ones of the meals, and then we'll fill in the gaps, which is literally what I typically tend to use. So we're here. I just want to make sure you can still see this. Perfect. So Mexican, what is something typical Mexican that you're gonna have is maybe tacos. They're just gonna go with that. Super simple. So what are you gonna put in your tacos? First of all, is a tortilla. So what does that fall in here? It falls under carbohydrates. So that's completed. So tortilla is number one. Then you need to add something inside of it. If you're a vegetarian, maybe doing some tofu or tempeh, or if you eat meat and like I do, then maybe you're doing some fish tacos and you just want to keep your fat a little bit lower, so you're just gonna do tilapia. Done. Perfect. Now you got your protein, you got your carbs, and now you move on to fruit or vegetable, right? So fruit vegetable, what's super simple to have vegetables in there? Some spinach, or you're also maybe adding something like um, some chopped up cabbage or something like this to actually make them really nice. And then you have now color in your plate. And the last thing, do you need to add a fruit into that rule of three? Not necessarily, but I usually like to add it because it's kind of like your dessert, and it really kind of helps you fill in a lot of the that kind of like craving or anxiety. I always kind of get it after a meal, but sometimes I don't do a fruit. Sometimes I do a protein bar. I have a couple recommendations on the food list that you should have received, like a one bar or a Quest Hero bars, which are delicious. And that's something that kind of like kills the cravings for me. And that even adds a little bit of extra protein into the mix. Again, I'm logging all these different things. And I move on to my dinner. I'm just gonna pick the rice because it's a simple one. So rice is gonna be a carbohydrate type, so that's covered. And then I just need to add two more components. Let's say we're actually doing some chicken, and we'll figure out a way to actually make it fun. Here's an example. We have an air fryer. So we actually take maybe some like oat flour, and then we do like some chicken breaded, right? And then we air fry it. And then we do that with some rice, and then we add some sort of vegetable option, some steamed vegetable option like um, Brussels sprouts. Actually, we had this today, this afternoon for lunch. So now you actually have the main structure of your days. And I'm literally going to teach you how that fits according to my macros, not yours, according to my macronutrient targets, exactly how it fit into this, and then how I actually finish up by filling in the gaps, which is actually not that difficult. I want to try to keep this call at 30 minutes to be respectful of your time, but at the same time, I want to make sure that you get as much value. So literally, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to share let's see here, my phone, no, not my cable. I'm actually going to stop share. I'm going to go here and via AirPlay. Perfect. Here we go. And we're gonna go to here. Perfect. All right, so now you should be able to see my screen, and you should be able to kind of see me in a little window in there, depending on where you're watching this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go directly into my fitness pal, right? So I have logged a few different things in here. I'm just gonna go to tomorrow, so make it a little bit easier for you guys. So as you can see here, there's 230 grams of carbs, 70 grams of fat, 170 grams of protein. That is my specific needs. Don't think that you have to do these. By the way, if you are new to my fitness pal, don't really know what I'm talking about, no worries. You should be learning this as the process as we get started. But the way I have it set up, I use the premium version because it allows me to see nutrients remaining as you kind of see it on the screen. So what that does is essentially helps me really look at how much do I have left. Most people in the free version have it in calorie focus, so they see this. And in calorie focus, there's not a problem with that, especially if you're in a nutrition auditing process. But the problem is that it's really hard for you to know how many grams of carbohydrates, proteins, unless you go all the way to the bottom under nutrition, where you can see the total and you can see the goal. Now, for me, I'm going to switch back down to macronutrient focused, which is going to help me understand what my nutrients that are remaining for me are going to be. So again, I'm going to go start off with the pancakes. Now, I have a lot of foods that I already logged for a long time, so they're still very simple to find in there. So I'm going to go here, protein pancake mix. We're not gonna get too much into how I measure things or anything like that. I just want you to get the gist of how is it that I typically plan out my meals. So I go in here and I say, okay, this is like my protein pancake mix from Trader Joe's. I did weigh it and it was about this much. And then I go and say, okay, I added about an egg because I wanted to add a little bit of extra protein into that. So that's great. And then say I want to add like the Greek yogurt on there. Perfect. So Greek yogurt, I do usually use like the 000 Oikos, which has a higher amount of protein. Great. And then the other thing I'm missing that I literally put in there was actually going to be something like strawberries. Perfect. So we got that part. I'm just going to say 5 medium strawberries that I chopped up in there. Cool. So now I have that part covered for tomorrow. So that's great. Now I move on to the second meal, which is going to be what? Tortillas. I get the corn and wheat tortillas from Trader Joe's. And tomorrow I have a good amount of carbohydrates that I want to consume. So I'm going to go for 3. Boom. Second thing, I need to add my protein. So I'm going to go here with some tilapia. I have some like tilapia frozen ones that I get from Walmart. I did weigh these out, so I'm just gonna say and pretend that I'm gonna have maybe about 6 ounces is my typical standard portion. So again, for you, maybe a little bit different. That's about 34, 35 grams of protein in there. And then I'm gonna add, what else did we say we were gonna add on here? Well, some spinach, some vegetables. We're gonna leave that out for now. And then let's say I'm gonna have an apple for, as a dessert option. Perfect. Great. As you can see, the numbers on the top start to come down, and that's okay. Now, obviously, that's what we have left to consume. Then we're going to go in my meal 3, and I'm going to add, obviously, what I had or what I said I would have for dinner. So I'm just going to say here, rice. It's brown rice, the one that we cooked today. So I'm going to say here, again, you can put this in cups. I prefer to actually weigh it cooked. And I'm just going to say here 200 grams. Perfect. Now, chicken. We typically use chicken breast, simple and easy. Again, my typical standard portion size for me to try to keep it simple, I recommend you to do the same is to pick a standard portion and I keep it the same. And usually I go in here and add my vegetable options. Brussels sprouts, you can put it in cups and whatever. I'm not super stringent when it comes down to actually measuring and weight your vegetables. But if you're gonna do it, that's fine. 125. Perfect. So that's actually all completed. Now, if you can see at the top, there's still a lot of things that I still have not filled in. This is a part of it where pre-planning comes really, really, really handy. And that's why I like to do it. Why? Because this is where I get to have some fun. And I encourage you to do the same because this is where you can kind of have the availability to say, you know what, I want to add something sweet. I want to have maybe some dessert or something fun that I can incorporate in here. As you guys probably will hear me a lot of it saying, I like believe in the 80-20 rule, which is 80% of your food coming from like whole food sources and something that is like not heavily processed. And then 20% could be the stuff that can be fun because we want to have a balance between everything. So again, we're here. So let's say in the morning, I'm a big fan of dark chocolate chips. I still have some stuff to play around with this. So I'm going to go and personally add that. So chocolate chips, sweet, great. Now remember, like what I'm eating is not compared to what you're eating. So these portions are going to be way different than what you would normally consume, depending. Like, some of you guys have higher calorie needs, some of you guys have lower calorie needs. It really depends on the stage that you're on. So I don't want you to feel like, oh my God, this guy eats so much food. That's like an 800 calorie meal. Again, this is just my example, okay? But just so you're gonna give you an example of this as we kind of go through this process. So anyway, so we have the dark chocolate chips. That is phenomenal. I love that. Andres, what about some syrup? You don't really add any syrup to your pancakes. I don't like to use an actual full or honey or something like that syrup. The main reason is because I prefer to use my carbs in other places, so that's why I don't like to use that. But don't be afraid to include carbohydrate sources or sugars or things like that if they're in moderation. But in my case, I'm not even going to log a sugar-free syrup because usually they have anywhere between 5 to 0 calories, so I don't necessarily need to add them. But that actually kind of completes that part of me when it comes down to that. Maybe if I actually get a little bit fun, I would say, well, almond butter, because I do have a good amount of maybe a tablespoon of almond butter that I can have in the morning, and that kind of finish up my breakfast. So that's perfect. Now we go into the second meal, and I say, okay, I have my my tacos, the basics of it. Well, I still have some fat, so how about we add some avocado in there? Perfect. So I guess we'll go in here like a quarter. Let's say I have an avocado. I'm feeling frisky today. So I go have an avocado. That's great. I still have stuff that I can actually fill in for the rest of the day. And this is where I can do the spinach, let's say a cup or whatever is maybe romaine lettuce or what you're using instead. Um, and 1 cup. And then maybe you're using some salsa, which it's very small, the amount of calories that it provides, but it still represents something. So salsa, I just usually kind of find something simple. So salsa dip, 1 tablespoon, that's about it. Again, it's not much, but it does represent something. And then I think that pretty much finishes that up. Maybe you're adding some tomatoes or something like that, smaller things that are still kind of adding up. And then for dinner, I'm gonna say here that the Brussels sprouts I'm gonna cook in with a little bit of olive oil, right? So I'm gonna go in here and say olive oil. A lot of things that you're cooking, you need to make sure you're accounting for those things. So maybe like 2 tablespoons, 2 teaspoons maybe. Perfect. And what I have left, this is what I like to use to include my snack or my fun food. I love this thing I like to call protein ice cream. It's a favorite thing of mine. Like some people don't like it. I love it. So what I do is I mix up almond butter, or not almond butter, almond milk, okay, unsweetened, but 1 cup. I throw in some protein powder. I have some whey from this company called Vegan. And I actually add a little bit of cereal. I like Kashi. It actually hits higher in carbohydrate or higher in fiber. So I do like to include that kind of stuff on there. As you can see, I already went a little over my carbohydrates. So we're going to make some adjustments here in a minute. But what I do is I simply kind of change this and say, well, maybe I don't really need to have 1 cup. Maybe I can have 3/4 of a cup. Excuse me. So I'm going to go 0.75. That's looking a little better. And then the rest of it, I'm like, okay, I still have like 10 grams of fat. Do I need to consume that? No, but you want to plan for it. Obviously, that is ideal, and that's like kind of like the goal that we're trying to do. So meal one has a good amount of fat. Meal two has a good amount of fat. Meal three can have maybe a little bit more. So, or you can simply add it to this meal right here. So again, I added some almond butter in the bottom. I actually like it a lot. So maybe I can use this a little bit here again. So almond butter, I'm gonna add the other tablespoon on there, and look how that's actually looking. So I planned out an entire day and I did it within 8 minutes, right? To actually fit all my macronutrients in a way that is fun. It's something that I enjoy. It's something that I like. That's exactly what I expect you guys to do. But it's obviously what I just did. It's something that doesn't come like, oh my God, he did it so easily. It's not as easy as it looks, because a lot of times you have to kind of understand how certain things provide certain others. For example, almond butter provides a good amount of fat predominantly, but also has some protein. So again, like it's some of the things that you're going to be learning as you go through this process. And you can go literally to the end. You can go to nutrition and you can look at that protein. My goal is 170 grams. I got to 170 grams. Carbohydrates 230. I got pretty closer to that. Fiber, this is a very important. Wow, I literally was not expecting this to be so on point. This is insane. This never happens. So, and then look at this. Like I actually got about 30 grams of fiber, which is, typically about 35 is really what I recommend. My fat looks pretty good. Sugar is maintained, and the rest of the numbers I don't really care about. So, and that's it. Honestly, it doesn't, a lot of times like people think about like meal planning, and they get so um oh yeah, so Giovanna, you asked me a question. How do we figure out what's best for our own personal macros? First of all, that's why you get the Coach Dane is going to help you determine that, because your numbers are going to be completely different than mine. In fact, in this process, you are probably receiving all your onboarding documentation, which is going to teach you how to calculate, well, not how to calculate it, but it's going to teach you how to track him and all those different things. But as we go through this process, you're going to determine, okay, this is what your coach is like, thinks it's best for you. But as you're doing a nutrition audit, which you should be kind of tracking and logging your food for this week, so we know and I have an idea of what you're currently doing, then the main goal of that is to understand exactly, well, what is the estimation of what Giovanna is currently consuming? And based on that, we will establish a baseline. And then that's when you're going to start doing what I just did and playing around a little bit with this. I recommend a lot of people, like at first, this takes, again, some time. You have to sit down and figure out, but what you like and how you want to include it, but it doesn't have to be too complicated. And then obviously there's wrenches that are thrown at you. For example, how do I track something when I go to a restaurant? Do I need to even do that? And again, these are the things that become complex, but can be simple as we go through this process. Our goal is to teach you all the different things so you understand them in a way that is sustainable and that is easier for you guys to get. These this is something I always tell people. Some people are super daunted with tracking macros, and they're like they can become obsessed with numbers. I don't want you to feel that that's what's going to happen here, especially a couple of you guys that are still new. What I want you to use macronutrients for is to kind of develop awareness, to understand how things fit into your day to day, because you're trying to achieve a goal, you're trying to achieve a result. Macros should not be driving your day, but instead you should be driving your macros according to what your needs are and according to your goals, and support them. Let's say you log all the different things like I did for tomorrow, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't really feel like eating pancakes today. No worries, change it up. That's why I always tell people like meal plans suck, because if you're given this thing and you have to eat the pancakes, then you're gonna eat the pancakes whether you want them or not, because it's part of the plan, right? In your case, you are coming up with your own plan. That is really the goal here. And that's exactly how meal planning literally works. All the diets you followed in the past, anything that you've done in the past, someone actually went through this process to create that, whether it was in the right way or not, but it wasn't personalized to you. So that's really the goal that we're trying to do here, is to help you get to a point where you can do it on your own. And then you can have the flexibility for it. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. Literally, I was right under 30 minutes. We still have a few minutes for questions. Feel free to drop it in there. I'm going to unmute you guys if you want to talk or you want to actually kind of share anything on here. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions if you have any. So let's see. I think I answered the one from Giovanna. Cool. Well, if you don't have any more questions, again, you feel free to drop them in there. Feel free to, cool. Let's see here. Perfect. Does that make sense? Hopefully this is like helpful to you guys. I know, for example, Vanessa works at really crazy hours. I know Angela, she crushes her macros. She's been doing this for a long time, so she knows exactly what I'm talking about, and she does a pretty good job at it. But again, I want to make sure that you guys have the flexibility to choose whatever it is without fearing food, enjoying it, but at the same time doing and making decisions that are supportive of your goals. And that is a process. It doesn't really come that easy as like, like overnight. But for example, the one thing I was going to say is like, we shouldn't really be spending like an hour in MyFitnessPal trying to figure out how to fit things in. Like literally what I just did, and that planning took me less than 10 minutes. And it probably is going to get to a point where it takes you that amount of time, or sometimes even less, when you kind of learn how to kind of use these resources in a way that is like really effective. So that's my message to you guys today. Of course, we're gonna try to do these accountability calls like once a month. If there's quorum, if people actually feels like they're gonna enjoy it and they're gonna be a part of it. Otherwise, obviously, we're just gonna do our one-on-one work, depending if you're working with me or with Coach Dana. And yeah, that's all I wanted to share with you guys today. Thank you so much for you guys for showing up in here. Definitely gonna send a recording of this in case you missed anything, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care and have a wonderful night. Bye, guys.